Hey everybody, on today's show, we're recording again with our Bugorama series. We came up here to Sacramento to the show, and I was able to sit down face-to-face the Let's Talk Dubs poker table. Today, on the mic with us out of Harold, California, I got Joey Giordano with Werkstatt Restorations. Joey, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. It's been a long time trying to put this together, as you know. We tried to do this a couple of years ago, but then all the COVID craziness hit, so it's glad to finally meet you and do this.
Yeah, and so what you guys might be hearing in the background that may be a little bit off-putting every now and again is there's some drag racing going on right now, so we'll try to keep the gains tight, but I think it's nice that you guys can get that vibe of just two guys having a conversation at a car show. So make one small adjustment, just bring that in towards you a little bit.
Perfect. Got it? Better?
Yeah, much better. So so the way we start the podcast every time is we start out with, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. Actually, my VW story started with my oldest sister. She had a boyfriend, and my dad bought him a car, 56 oval window. Sat on our side yard for years, and I would go sit in that car. Took a little 12-volt battery in there. He had a Nissan hard-body radio that he took out of it. It was an old Clarion. Right. Hooked that puppy up one speaker. I would sit in that car and just dream of driving it. Well, I never paid my dad. So really? The car got defaulted to me. That was my first car. I spent all my teen years working temp agencies and stuff to get that car built. I sanded that car, stripped it with good old strippies, getting the chemical burns and everything, and the rest is history. I mean, it just created this passion that
So your first car was a 56 oval?
56 oval.
So that's pretty rare, because a lot of people that I have on the podcast, they're usually their first car, a lot of guys, is like a 73, 75, or like a late model, and then they kind of they dip their toe in the scene, and then they got to track down a cool car. Like, oh man, I didn't know I had one that was uncool until then. So kicking it off with a 56 oval is a pretty big deal. So was this car, did you do it, was it lowered, custom, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, and a lot of the parts, actually, they were sourced here from Bugorama. So the car started out with it was a hardtop car, had all the original parts on it, and it was still, it was a decent builder, not as much rust as that we're seeing now, but it didn't need any rust repair. It was really easy to build for my caliber of what I did. I was 14, 15 years old, got into that thing, man. That was the first time I ran a wire harness and did all those types of things. So the car, it created a passion for me for round window cars. And then my next car was a 63 ragtop. Once I had a ragtop car, it was like, the best combination was an oval rag, and that was my first VW that I bought once I got back into the scene, because I took a little break having kids and doing all that stuff. It just didn't fit in the budget for a bit.
Yeah, we had one of my first cars was a 63 ragtop. I posted it before on my podcast that I'm trying to find this car, and all I need to get to the VIN number. But the ragtop, it's so funny because we're about the same age. How old are you?
I'm 46.
Okay, so you're just a pup. I'm 48. I'm going to turn 49 next weekend, and but in our generation, it was like, what was crazy back then is, a 65 and newer was like the commonplace, but then ragtops were like super rare, and then oval windows seemed like even more rare. And it's interesting that nowadays all those cars are like, oh yeah, it's just an oval window or ragtop. Now it's like split windows and coach builts and all that stuff. But I think as the hobby's progressed, people have just been digging for older and older stuff. But I still love the classic look of a pre-64, small window, cloth sunroof car. Just to me has like some of the best lines on it. Absolutely.
And then you add the little character details like the ice pick handles, the clover taillights and stuff like that. I mean, that's all the jewelry that makes those cars what they are. And if you really know the cars, then you know what you're looking at, and that's what makes the difference in a lot of cases.
Well, and you're kind of lucky because you grew up here. I mean, you grew up not far from Sacramento, and here in Northern California. I mean, up here, there's like cars and fields, and there's so much Volkswagen stuff hidden all about. Plus, you guys have Bugorama and all this stuff. So this was kind of, but you lived outside of Sacramento, so not super close to the big city, but still in the custom car scene vibe.
Yeah, when I first got involved with Volkswagens, I remember buying it. It was the oval window. I bought it in Stockton, actually, of all places. Yeah. And so and we lived in Stockton. So it was an interesting dynamic there. But this car, I remember, it was in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
It was $3,000. That was a lot of money back then for an oval window car. So it was a still pretty desirable car. And I just remember that amount of money was, it was unexplainable to me because it was, so long ago. Now you're lucky to find anything anywhere close to that. But.
And cars. I remember my first bug I bought was a '62, and I paid $200 for it, and it was like I could buy a lowered bug and it made me cool. It was like pulled torsion leaves, and it was just slammed on smoothies with Porsche nipples, and it was like that's the look, right? But now, as we start off in our VW evolution, and then go into the second cars that we have. And then I think it's interesting because there's two parts to our story, right? There's the pre-marriage and kids, and then post-marriage and kids. So I know that I got out of it when I kind of sold cars. I got burnt out on Volkswagen. I think we all go through it every now and again. When do you decide? Because you get wife, kids, all the stuff, career. You start focusing on work, and you worked in the automotive industry for a few years, right?
Yeah, for 26 years with Toyota and Lexus.
So you work for Toyota and Lexus. So you have that. And that makes it a little tougher sometimes, like working on cars all the time at work and then coming home and seeing cars kind of makes it like, it's like I need a break, right?
Not really with me. I've had this, I was built with a mechanical mentality, and cars have always been my thing. Had restoration been a lucrative career in the 90s where you could support a family, I probably would have went that direction. Instead, I had to go with a dealership style job so that I could support my family and the lifestyle that we wanted to. But as far as the pre-wife, post-wife lifestyle, me and my wife got together. I was 16 years old.
Oh, yeah.
I gave her $50 to buy her first car. She never paid me back, and I don't hold grudges, but it's
a lot of interest.
We remind her once in a while, compounded daily, and so we've had a strand of VW stuff. But for a while there, we had our kids in different things. Of course, couldn't do the bus thing. We ended up getting into quads. Going camping, dunes, making memories,
all that stuff,
and doing that kind of stuff. So we're riding Banshees and blasters and just all the two-stroke world and just loving it. And my kids started going away to college, and I just got to the point with me and my wife, and I said, "Listen, done with the big 42-foot fifth wheel, all the process of getting ready for a trip and coming home from a trip. It was cleaning and prepping, and it's thousands of dollars." And I was like, I'm getting rid of this thing. I'm buying a bus. And I said, we're just going to camp like a bunch of modern day hippies. And it just kind of evolved from there. And that's where the Safari Bay came from.
Yeah. So the Safari Bay was in Hot VWs. What issue of Hot VWs was in?
It was in October of 2017? No, 2019. October 2019. And it was also in VW Camper Commercial. And I got the pleasure of shooting that with Eric Arnold. I met Eric Arnold at Buses by the Bridge.
Yeah, Vegas boy.
Yeah, I met him at Buses by the Bridge. Great guy to deal with. Has a passion for what he does and the passion for our cars, passion for what he does with photography. It was a great chemistry.
And you get back in the scene getting a bay window bus, right? I
actually right before that, I bought exactly what we were talking about. I bought a 56 oval rag.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I bought a 56 oval rag, threw it on some Randars, and just came in swinging. That was my dream car, and that's what I always wanted.
Now, did that car get featured?
No, it hasn't.
Okay, you still have that car?
Still have that car.
Okay, so that's what kicked off the re-emergence into the scene, and now you start doing you find this bay because you want, like, hey, it's kind of a cruiser and you can have more fun, like you can hang out for a weekend, because we get to these car shows and it's like you don't want to sit in the driver's seat of your car, but if you got a bus, you can kind of lounge for a little bit, right?
Yeah, and with us, it always became the journey was part of the adventure, not just sitting in a car show, and we love the drive. And so this bus I bought. Yeah, and it was up in the foothills. It was rusty, so I said, "Hey, I'm just going to get this typical entry. I'm going to get this thing running and drive it, right?"
Basics,
so
just the basics.
Just the basics. And so I picked this up Memorial Day weekend, or it was actually Labor Day weekend. After a Bugorama, I drive up and pick up this bus, and I bring it home. It just, within a day, it's stripped down. I'm calling up Russ at Old Speed, getting drop spindles and everything I want to do to get the thing sitting right, and it just snowballed into what it became, but I went into it with a vengeance, and I did that bus in like 4 months.
Really? Start to finish?
Start to finish.
Now, what did you do specifically to that bus?
I did all the fabrication work, metal fabrication. I defoamed the dash, welded up all the holes and everything, smoothed it up. Did all the, pretty much every aspect of that bus I did.
So all the fabrication, then the one thing you did is pretty unique on that is you did the Safari windows all the way around. All the side windows, everything you did Safari windows. Now, how did you come up with that idea, and then what did it take to get that done?
So that idea was just more from, I just wanted to do something so different. But the idea and concept behind it was, is we go to the beach. We love cruising to the beach. We go out to Half Moon Bay. We've pretty much driven up all the California coast with that bus, and
right.
camped in Rincon Park and all kinds of different places. But we love the breeze, the air. I wanted airflow. So I was like, man, if I put safari windows in this thing, that would be epic. We can open the windows, and I mean, we have pictures of us with our feet hanging out the windows, and we're in Rincon Park next to these, $1 million diesel pushers, and everyone's just like, they love the bus.
They're
and
jealous.
So, yeah, I don't think we've ever had to cook a meal when we were in Rincon Park, because everybody likes that bus so much they invite us over for dinner just so they can hear the story and talk about it. So yeah, I ended up, I had this idea that I wanted to do this, and Jeremy Brooks, I had used him for safari windshields on a couple other builds that I'd done, and I reached out to him and I says, hey, look, man, I really want to use this concept in this bay windows is something you can do. He says, yeah, I can do that. And I said, well, what's it going to take? He says, well, it's not going to be cheap. I said, well, I didn't really ask what it's going to cost, because I already know what the answer is going to be. I said, I need it done and give me a time frame. And at that point, he got back to me. He says, yeah, he can do it. Here's the price. And he busted him out and took good care of me. He's a great guy to deal with, and it made a very unique build for sure. So
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing right now. When we're building cars, and our background goes to the 80s and the 90s and what the style was back then. But as we're coming out, we're not guys that like, we appreciate the history, but we're also part of the scene, the living scene, where we want to elevate the game, right? With everything we bring out, we want to try to do something a little different. And for sure, that bus stands out on its own. It's a memorable bus. And my attitude personally has always been, when you build a car, like when you're done with a car, you want people to be able to refer to your car like, oh yeah, the safari, the bay window bus with all the safaris on it. Yeah, that bus. You know what I mean? Or where it kind of stands out on its own. I mean, for me, that's when you've built a car that, whether people like it or they don't, it stands on its own, and it's kind of iconic, And
that was one of the things with Eric. He put it out there, and which is the way my concept as well is, because just like we were saying, these cars that were unique and built with different paint schemes and those were the cars that really stood out to me, because I love tattoos, I love lowrider art style paint jobs, because I just love the detail. And so to do something that's unique to yourself and it's kind of your trademark vehicle, it's a very unique experience. And Eric Arnold, when we were talking, he says, you only get to build something for the first time once.
Right.
And somebody can only come up with that concept once. And to be able to do that, I was shocked that nobody had done it with safaris and all the way around on one of those.
Well,
and
especially with technology that's available, right?
Yeah. And so it was just one of those things. And a lot of times when I start with a car, I don't have a footprint of how I want to build this car. As the car kind of evolves, especially if it's for me, I let it speak to me, kind of how it's going to flow, and just whatever kind of rolls with me. I just take my time and kind of visualize some different aspects of the build and where I want to go with it, functional wise, and the kind of statement I want to build with the car. Not that I will never build a car for somebody else or to please others. I try to build something that's unique to me, like we're talking about, and that represents who I am, just as a person, as a builder, and just something that's can be accepted in the scene.
Well, there's a lot to be said for that, because even the Bull Run bus I built in my garage. My buddy painted it. I bought a motor. I designed and built it, and that's, everybody can take a shot now because I mentioned the Bull Run bus again. But when you're coming up with a concept and you're building a car, whether you're the guy writing the checks or you're the guy doing the work, if it's your concept and your design and your ideas, it's nice to see that come through, because I think we all start with a vision, like in our head, of what we want. But like you said, you do the stance, or a new set of wheels comes out or something. I remember, when I built my first bus, it was like, I'm going to be the first bus on BRMs because it just came out. And then I saw a bus on BRMs. I said, all right, well, I can't do that, so I got to do something different, which is why it ended up on the Twist. But so much of the build process is kind of, you start off with a vision in your head of like a couple different cars, and then as you start to put it together, different things will kind of push the direction in the way that it goes. Interior wise in that bus, can you describe to some listeners any special, unique things that you've done in the interior on that?
The cool thing about that bus is it's a fully functional camping bus. So I took a regular Z-bed, I stretched it to full width, and made it so that it's a functional Z-bed. We actually have camped in that. The interiors are Bordeaux red tweed from SoFine. They've always been great to deal with. They did all the door panels, the front seat upholstery, and then I had a local upholstery shop, Cool Customs out of Lodi, actually do the custom bench seat work in the back because I have an L wraparound bench
with a Z bed.
With the Z bed,
it's functional.
Yes, and it overlaps. I made it so that it overlaps the side bench, and then the side bench is actually flip up for storage.
Nice.
So it worked out. It actually is a full functional bus with storage, and we've used it to camp, like I said, multiple times. And you take that thing into a campground, it's a fun icebreaker, piece to kind of get people talking to you, and people love it.
Now, what do you got for drivetrain in there?
It's a dual port 1776 with dual K-drons, just a set of 40s.
Just
I like
reliable.
Simple, easy, because it's a bus. I want to drive it. I don't want to deal with complex. And honestly, I have a very simple concept when it comes to engines, because it simply comes down to the fact I didn't have the money to build big pimping motors when I was a kid.
Right.
So I just always did simple, get as efficient and easy to tune and dial into.
And now, once you showed that bus, you're pretty protective of it and scared of it wherever you go, or are you just not, like, you just drive it now?
That's the beauty of what I do, man. It's like, if I do paint and body too, so if I drive it, I don't believe in cars that should be garage art or trailer queens. I want to drive my stuff. Have I trailered my stuff places? Absolutely. But what it really comes down to it, the true VW scene for me is driving your cars and not making it. You're not taking things. It's part of the memory of the car is driving it, and that's where, whether it breaks down or not, you just take it with a grain of salt and you just enjoy it. It is what it is.
No, listen. I've always said that VW enthusiasts are specific to. They have to be like resourceful people, because your VW could leave you stranded at any given time, and you've got to be able to just persevere through whatever's going on and get to where you got to go to kind of get things cobbled together until you can get things fixed properly. So the VW world, it really thins the enthusiasts out pretty quick. So I think people that have been in the VW scene for a while, they've had to deal with all the rough stuff and all the breakdowns and all that. So I like to think of the VW world as like really resourceful people. When the zombie apocalypse hits, it's just going to be mostly VW people left, because we'll be able to figure out how to get through.
But it just makes it easier too. With technology, with electric fuel pumps, electric ignition systems and stuff, it has made it much easier and more reliable in that way, because you're not dealing with points and condenser failures and those types of things. But the best thing you could carry in any VW is a fire extinguisher. That's down to. You could save the car, but if it has to go home on a tow truck, then it is what it is. And we've had more than one tow truck ride, but we just take it with a grain of salt. Me and my wife just kind of roll with it. It makes it a lot of fun.
Oh, no, totally. That's it. I think the women that we marry, they have to be committed to, like, listen, you might have to push. Just like push, or can you steer, pop the clutch? Like, I need you to do one. You got to pick your poison, because you got to do one or the other. Because my wife is, I've been married 22 years, I think, and we went last September, and I bought that limo bug. So we flew to Texas, and I was like, hey, let's just drive it back. She's like, heck yeah. My wife's always down for a road trip. Yeah. And then, she's found herself in many situations where I've thought to myself, I wonder if she's thinking to herself, I married the wrong guy. Like, why am I in this situation on the side of the road? Because I think there's several classics that we've gone to in a row where it's like, I've run out of gas, or I wasn't prepared, or whatever happened. So kudos to the women in our lives, because they have to put up with a lot of stuff to be married to knuckleheads like us that are down to buy these bucket of bolts that sometimes leave us stranded. So I want to talk about Werkstatt Restorations, which is a company you started a few years back, and I really want to talk about, you go from working at a corporate dealership, from that level to having your own shop. Some of the things, what was the inspiration to start your shop?
Well, like you and like most VW enthusiasts, it started young. So I never really, just having the mechanical aptitude that I do and working at a manufacturer level, as far as on a line text type production system, I've always had a mentality of being efficient with what I do, how I do it, but I have to enjoy it as well. If you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's one of those sayings that most people should live by. And as we all spend so much time in our life at work, that you need to disconnect. So this stuff's always been a disconnect for me. But I never got tired of working on anything. Because if I'm working at Toyota, for example, and I'm working on a Prius and doing reflashes and doing all this, whatever have to do on a daily basis, it's completely different than a Volkswagen thing. So what ended up happening is we came across some property and out in Herald, and it's 20 acres. It was a great time to buy. It was back when the housing market was tanked. we obviously took a little bit of a bath on our house, but we were able to walk away from our house in town with money, which was unheard of because everything was short sailing and it was just a nightmare to try to sell a house. But we walked right into this 20-acre property, brand new house getting built, and it just fell in our lap. We were just like, this has to be meant to be.
Sure.
So we buy this thing, and of course, we all want to shop. And so, I grew up in the country as well. And so I was like, man, I'm going to build a shop. So we ended up getting into, we got this property going, and then I was like, well, California and their interesting way of doing things. I decided, you know what, let's find something ag to do. We can do grapes or something, let's farm.
Let's farm something.
Yeah, we ended up taking a 3-acre portion of our property, planting 1,600 olive trees that we process locally with Cal Virgin olive oil, and they make olive oil with these olives.
Really?
So since I built this olive farm, now I get to build an ag building. But guess what? There's a lot of German tractors in there.
Right.
So kind of just using the process of how I did things. And so I did my regular job. And so once I built the shop, we have our car club, Straight Up Dubs. So we started that. There's, we're a very small club, but we try to do some impactful things for the VW community here in Northern California. So we used to put on VW shows a couple times a year at Lasher Volkswagen in Elk Grove. They would open up the showroom for us, everything. We could post up all vintage Volkswagens in the showroom. They were great to deal with. They would allow us to take over the place, and you have a vintage Volkswagen show and a modern dealership. So it was a very unique experience, but that grew so fast with the community up here that we could only get about 200 cars in there. And so we outgrew that pretty quickly. And so we ended up starting a camper show, a camping show right before COVID hit, out at a place in Galt, McFarland Ranch, which is, that's kind of the way we see the future of the VW events going. It's a camping, it's a car show, it's kid friendly. You can have a beer vendor, you can have ice creams, funnel cakes, and all this crazy stuff. And it's like a carnival with VWs. So we started doing that. Well, in the process of doing that and getting in with the club, I ordered a shop online. And started looking into that, and I got the shop, got the foundation done, and I just started looking at the plans. I'm like, this is numbers. I can build this. So I ended up building the whole shop myself. It's a 50 by 60 shop, all steel shop. And so I insulated and everything. So I took a few months and built the shop. And then it kind of evolved into it started out as just a hobby shop with, the guys would come over, we'd hang out, we'd build, we'd work things, which we still kind of have that vibe.
Right, which I thought I saw in the beginning, like a bunch of stuff you were posting up front, and it looked like more like you were hanging but working on your personal projects, and friends would come over and you'd help them out and stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same vibe. I never want to close that door,
right.
But you also have to be careful and filter that too, because people will come in and take advantage of a lot of it. So you have to definitely have to be careful how you do that. And you know what? Sometimes it's things don't go the way you plan on it, and you just learn from it, man. You don't make a big deal about it. But so that happened, and so I ended up changing from Toyota to Lexus as a line tech job, and so I did that for years. I was a Toyota Lexus Master Tech. I had my smog license. I was fully certified, did hybrids, EVs, dealing with Tesla powertrains and a number of different things, and it was fun because that was a challenge in that way. And then I got to come home and do more of what you would call the simple, just hands-on grunt work. And I love working with my hands, building things. And during that process is when I built the Safari Bay. And then it kind of evolved from there. And we've talked about, I've done, some other buses and stuff. I did split windows and different things. And it just kind of, some of the stuff started getting put in magazines. And then obviously you take them to the local shows, people notice it, they ask who did this, who did that. And it just started growing to the point where, it was kind of like, well, I need to really start thinking about how this is going to go and eventually make a turn, because I knew this was eventually where I wanted to go. Because working in the automotive field, it kind of has, the income has decreased to the point where it wasn't really, the dollars weren't making sense, man. Right, so I was just like, I gotta get out at some point, because this has turned into a negative situation. The investment that I have and the time that I'm in and money that I'm making, it just isn't making sense. And so the automotive field's kind of turned the corner in that way. Mm-hmm. And so you see the restoration world kind of taking the shape that it is, and where people are wanting to build some good quality vehicles. Yeah. And with the right people and the right chemistry. And I'm all about relationships. Even when I build my cars, that I don't want to deal with people that are unkind or mean. I have to be able to, just like we are right now, man, we have to have a beer and a meal and hang out. And if we can't, I'm not the right guy for you.
And it's one of those things where I said to someone the other day, I own my own business. I'm a contractor in Vegas. And I said to a customer, I said, I just don't think we're the contractor for you. She says, what are you doing? I said, we're just not a good fit. I'm just going to refund your money and we're just going to go separate ways. Well, you can't do that. I said, yeah, that's why I have my own company. I have my own company. So like, if I just feel like we're not a good fit, we're just not a good fit. And it's okay. We don't have to be friends. You know what I mean? Like it's, because business is relationships, and relationships are really, those relationships continue to spur more business. And I think, it's a joke at my shop. Everybody says, oh yeah, it's a friend of Bill's, because when I meet with clients and stuff, we end up creating a friendship, and, from that point forward, it continues to generate more work organically instead of a forced or hard sale or things to that degree. So there's definitely some value in that. When you decided to go full-fledged and like, I'm going to do this, I'm leaving Toyota, I'm going to do this 100%. What were you nervous at all to do that? I mean, what were some of the fear and anxiety you had with that? Because that's a big move to make.
It was a big move. The biggest thing was just getting all my business license and my bar license and getting everything lined up so that it was legitimate business thing. And there's a learning curve to that. I would say the scariest part of it was making sure that the documents and everything I had in place were legitimate and that I could do this properly.
Right.
And then, getting insurance and all those different things. Because we're in California, we all know that's not a cheap, easy thing to do. Which is why I keep I pretty much am the only, I do almost everything I do by myself. If there's any outside sourcing, it's pretty limited because one, I want the quality to stay up, and two, I just don't want the liability. And people just don't have the same passion we do for what we do. And I'm sure you see that, and especially since COVID's hit. Most people are making more money on unemployment and staying home than they do working a real job. So it's kind of been interesting. So as far as growth goes, I don't know what this is going to totally turn into at this point. I know I can do what I can do. Have some pretty exclusive cars that I've got, and I've been blessed in that way. I got a great relationship with Jason Wren at Wren Metalworks. I mean, that's been a great builder, and that was a huge part of me making the decision too, is that we have this relationship. We kind of have a partnership it's an unspoken partnership where we've done things with each other, for each other. There's no money exchange. It's absolutely just a bro deal, and it's what I think the whole VW scene's about.
Right. Just like two guys that are honest with each other and are able to communicate pretty well and know that, recognize the talent that each other person has. Because a lot of times, there's always the dynamic of like one person is able to communicate with clients and bring projects along and have that personal touch, where there's a lot of guys that build cars like you can't even talk to them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're super curt and short and it's just, it's a difficult dynamic because they've got a lot of talent, but they're not able to really get the business because people are like, it's too much work to deal with this guy or whatever the case is. So it's interesting how there's, different temperaments in relationships affect business to a certain degree, where it's really beneficial on both parts if two people kind of complement each other in the way that they do business.
Yeah, and it's a rare thing. I mean, I'm sure you've ran into it as well, where a lot of times I'm a lone ranger, and because I have so much passion and so much heart for what I do, and most people don't share that, and that becomes very evident early in a relationship once you start working with somebody. So to have somebody like Jason that I can freaking team up with, we both have the same passion, and sometimes we have to have some not so comfortable conversations or say something, but that's what it's about. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's that accountability that goes with it, and we just have to, or we have a direction we want to go with the project, and we want to stay on a time frame. We work it out, man. But we've had a lot of fun, and sometimes you just have to dig deep because you're trying to make a deadline to get a car to a show. And we ran into that with patches that we did for him, and it was we had to get to Buses by the Bridge, and he drove that puppy there. That was his test drive. Really? He literally drove it from his shop to the house in like less than 5 miles, and we jumped right in and drove straight to Lake Havasu. So it's important. The relationships is what it's all about. But that's been a life thing for me all the way around. I just don't want to deal with mean people. I mean, I had an interesting relationship with my parents, and it just was those were examples that I learned from, and exactly like the person I didn't want to be. I love being social, talking to people, and just being out and being real. And transparency is huge with me, man. If you can be transparent and just none of us are perfect. We all have our faults, but guess what? One of my biggest sayings, and I'm sure you'll attest to this, is that it's not the fact that something happens, because something's going to happen.
Always.
It's how you deal with it that
100%.
Makes the difference, man. And you gotta. And if it comes down to integrity and character, and you can stand behind what you do, guess what? You lick your wounds when you're done, but do what's right.
Yeah.
People, that's just a rare thing nowadays.
Well, sometimes it's interesting because even in my business, as much as it's my day-to-day job is, and I kind of worry about like if my day-to-day job became automotive, because I used to be into car audio when I was younger, and I started doing car audio installations, and then it kind of not became so fun when it became a grind just to knock out new radios for Nissan and stuff like that. And in my business now, things happen. Like we said, they're always going to happen. And my mentality is like, hey, look on the bright side. You got a guy that's going to stand behind it and make it right. So no worries. We're going to get this handled. And then there are those people that want blood. Like they want, and I've had to say to people, I said, I just want to understand this. We had this circumstance, and I said, no problem. I'll take care of it. My dime. I'll make it right. Somehow that's not enough for you. Now, I thought when you hired me that you just wanted a job done right, that you didn't want a personal commitment from me that it's going to cost me personally in my life. Because I had someone tell me just recently, they must have been, the house must have been on an Indian burial ground or something, because they just had some bad luck. Like everything showed, like the material was wrong and this was wrong and the guy didn't want to be there and like all kind of stuff. And she said, the client said to me, this has been the worst experience of my life. I said, well, it's a good thing you're not in the Middle East, because they're throwing people off buildings over there. So let's kind of reel things in. And remember, these are first world problems, and we're going to get through this. Like, I know it's the worst experience of your life, and I think you should think about what you said to me, because if this is the worst thing in your life, you got a pretty good life.
Exactly.
Like getting your new floor in your house has been, but there's some people. And I think in life, it's too short to deal with those kind of people. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And the problem that I've seen happen is people deal with them, don't say anything to the next guy. The next guy's got to deal with that person. And those are the people that make things suck, Yep. The good thing about having your own business is you have the ability to say, hey, we're not a match, and thanks, but no thanks. But with your circumstance and selling the house, buying the property, and kind of lower, I would assume you've lowered your personal overhead to a point, plus had a little bit of income, which made it easier to kind of leapfrog over to another thing. Because, of course, I think with most guys with families, we have that understated anxiety all the time. We got to feed a family, we got to keep things moving, and it's the constant hustle, right? We're working 3-4 days ahead in our head, making sure we've got, eggs to bring home for people to eat. And do you think that with your current circumstance and being in that mentality of like, hey man, I can do this from a love standpoint and not I gotta make the rent standpoint?
Yeah, and that was the beauty of me, and that it's just simple economics. The beauty of me buying the property when I did made it super affordable. Now it's ridiculous, the properties and stuff we're dealing with. But one of the big deciding factors and easiest transition things with the facts were is that me and my wife, we started from nothing. We have 3 kids. I was 17 years old. I had my first daughter. She was at my high school graduation. We had kids young. So 2 of my daughters were already through college. I had my son. He was finishing high school. And so a lot of my expense was pretty much gone as far as that.
Tell me I got 4 kids.
Yeah, and so
they're like vampires to the bank account.
And so once we got through that, I was kind of like, man, I said, you know what? This is something that, and so I try to lead a very humble life. I try to be very simplistic in that way. I don't buy things to impress other people. I just try to keep it simple, man. I build things that we're going to enjoy. It's functional. It makes sense. And I try to be practical in all those ways, because I just think once you start living for other people and trying to impress other people, man, that's the day it starts going backwards. And that's where, you just got to, I try to always keep myself in check in that way. And I definitely look at my blessings and in life. And I know that I've been gifted a lot of things. And some of it's the talents that I have and the ability to create relationships like I do. And those have been pivotal in my life, man. Because most people, like you're saying, that people aren't kind and people aren't really worried about the fact that you're going to fix it right. It's how they blow the inconvenience out of proportion. It's not really that big a deal.
I've really been inconvenienced for this imaginary deadline that didn't exist when we started this project, but now it exists. I get that all the time. Like I say, like, well, Memorial Day was the same weekend, right? Like it was the same weekend when we started this project. But I think the mentality of working when you're not doing that kind of stuff allows you to be a little more flexible and a little more be pushed by your passion versus like pushed by the rent, the landlord, or what, you know what I mean? Like some of these guys, because there's a lot of guys out there that are really, really talented, but they just are scrambled all the time because they're trying to make the rent. They're in too much overhead. That they haven't figured out how to keep the hamster wheel moving kind of fluid. With your shop, what are some of the projects that you've got to work on because of your flexibility or your creativity and your ability to be able to kind of really work with customers that maybe jobs you've been referred to, some of the highlight projects you were able to work on?
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I deal with, it's all word of mouth. I do no advertising. It's pretty much you meet
which is
people,
huge.
Which is huge. Which that social media is huge too. I mean, that's a big part of how we can progress it, and just in daily life. And as long as you put out a product and I don't do drama. That's the biggest thing for me. But I mean, a lot of the stuff that's come my way, there's better people out there. There's people that have done more than me. But I'm going to put as much heart and soul as I can in that car.
Sure.
And I don't know. I have the. I think we were talking the other day at the Type 3 meetup, and I have the 47 split window that I'm doing right now for one of the guys down in Southern California. That we're doing full stock, basically pre-war military theme. And that car, the client's an amazing.
So it's a custom.
No, it's
so it's like a full military drab green type of.
Exactly, it was a U.S. Army exchange vehicle in Germany.
Really?
Yeah, it was a 47. And so that car it's a timepiece. And so I'm working directly with Jason on that, Jason Wren, and we're building that car as correct as possible. And that client is footing the bill to make sure that thing has the right lever shocks, the right distributor clamps, everything that comes down to every nut and bolt in that car, which is amazing. And then so we get to do that. And then I've got a couple other split windows that I'm doing. Unique experience this last week. I got to go to Canapa Motorsports with
Bruce
the Blanchards.
Got that's a big dollar restoration guy. For those in the VW world that don't know, like Bruce Canepa is the guy that all the big money Porsche the 935s, all those big high dollar $5-10 million race cars. He's the guy that restores those.
Jerry Seinfeld, people that famous people, just stuff like that. And it's not that I get starstruck in that, but I appreciate the artistry and the attention to detail. And we rolled up to that, went with the Blanchards. They picked up the cheapest car there was a 51 split window, crusty car out of Sweden. So he picks up this car, but I got to go meet Bruce, which is cool too, unique, because I was on a show, Cars Yeah, that was on Mav TV, and then I also did a podcast with Mark Green on that too. So he also did an interview with Bruce Canepa. So it was kind of neat to make that connection, because we had that same kind of brotherhood, for lack of a better way of putting it, and just kind of see how the other half lives and does things.
The other half,
and that makes me feel like I'm just in a little Unabomber shed building cars, and it was crazy. That place was insane, but just an amazing experience too.
Yeah, the people. It's interesting because the great equalizer in our hobby is the Volkswagen, right? Like that neutralizes everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a contractor, or whatever. The cars and the passion for the cars is what we have here. Now, working on things like the 47 split, obviously you're not a vintage guru, so you're busy brushing up on research on a constant basis with the 47 split.
Yeah, and the beauty in that is that Jason Wren, he digs in, man, and he is a detailed nut about that type of stuff, and so I get to lean on him a lot of that, because he is definitely the force behind that, because we're kind of doing this as a co-build, and so the client supports it 100%, and that's one of those things that he is much better at resourcing, and he's also got the relationships and built those relationships over the years with people out of Germany and different avenues as far as getting correct parts and making sure that we make this as specific and exact as possible, which is what the goal is. And it's been fun, because the process, this whole thing with these cars, it's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. Everyone's watching these build shows where they build a complete custom cars in 7 days. Well, come on, we all know you can't do that. Just chemically, paint doesn't work that way. You
can do it. You're just gonna get some shrink back later.
Yeah, it just doesn't stack like that, and so you definitely have to. It just doesn't work that way, and so you're gonna redo it for sure. So, but yeah, and that's where you just lean on the people that you can, and that's where relationships are absolutely critical in this industry and just in the scene itself. Is that whether you can lean on the people that you need to. And a lot of times, if somebody knows you're looking for something, you don't even have to contact them. If you're a nice enough guy and you built the relationship, they will contact you, say, hey, look, I've got a lead on some stuff for you. So it's been really cool in that way. The community is awesome in that way, that once you get yourself established, and you really don't have, it makes it easier, but it's not easy, but it makes it much easier.
Right. Now, with what you have in the pipeline right now, with the 47, things like that, you have other cars on deck that are coming out soon, and then how do you keep those cars kind of from being overexposed before their debut? Because debuting a car is kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of times I'm not afraid of putting stuff out there, but I will be limited, because let's face it, people try to creep in and get their style out, and building other cars as well. I mean, I do mostly VW. I've got some Porsche stuff that I've done, some 356s and stuff, and just having fun. I like being creative. I have to, I dabble in a little bit of different things because it helps spark my creativity. It just gives me more of a diversified perspective of things. I love going to hot rod shows and just seeing different things. I mean, we've got old American cars as well. I know some people think that's sacrilegious, but I'm just a car guy.
Not on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm just a car guy through and through, man. I can jump in my 49 shoebox, and me and my wife are going out to grab ice cream, and we just love it, man. Because it's an old flathead 3 on the tree. I'm loving it. So when it comes down, car people are car people, and it's obvious when they're car people. They have that same passion. It's almost like it's an extension of them, or it's one of their one of their offspring that they want to invest in and make it as nice as possible. And everyone's got a different style budget. Not everybody's down to spend $50,000 building a perfect car, but the reality of it is when we make it clear in our contract, it costs money and it takes time, and you have to be straight up with people.
And so, who's your ideal client, or are you able to work at every level on any type of car, or what do you prefer to do at your shop?
I like variety. So, I mean, a lot of times once people bring me their car to do just a paint and body car, and they just want the car back, most of the time I end up building the car because I like pulling headliners. I like running wires. I like the diversity and the variety of types of things to do, because to me it's to get to that point where you're completing a project, you take in something that's just a turd, and then by the time you're done, it's a diamond. It's just, they bring it into you on a trailer after they got it blasted and stripped down, and then next thing you know, they're driving it away. It's a pretty cool experience to see somebody with that smile on their face, and they're loving it. But the ideal clients, like you said, it's people that are just kind. You can communicate with them. You're not afraid to make a phone call to them. You're not afraid to get a phone call from them, and what it comes down to, communication. And I like to create a very unique experience where I'm sending people a pretty regular stream of photos and updates as far as where we're at with their car. So,
what kind of Volkswagens have you not done yet that you wouldn't mind getting your hands on?
I've done buses, I've done 356s, Porsches, I've done split windows, ovals. I mean,
you guys do a Frid?
I did. Well, the Frid was from KCW. I just did some repairs on it, and then I also did the roof on it. I painted the roof black because that's what it's a good buddy of mine, Kevin, wanted, and so we did that. And so it was actually in a KCW build like 18 years ago. Right. Needed a little freshen up, a little clean up, and we did that. And so I'm not afraid to do that stuff either. I mean, you just kind of dig in and make it what the client wants.
So if somebody, let's say somebody's out there, they've got their car insured, and they're up here in the Sacramento, Northern California area, and they get in an accident, they got Haggerty or whatever like that, are you a place they could bring it to get that stuff done?
Absolutely. And I've dealt with Haggerty. I mean, I've dealt with AAA. I've dealt with State Farm. They make it pretty easy nowadays too. I mean, they'll send an adjuster out with me. I built relationships with them. Nice. And a lot of the transition was easy as well. We talked about that earlier, is that I have friends that are already in the body shop and collision repair business, so I can lean on them, and that's more of the relationship side of things.
Because it's different to get, like I had my 55 Bug that was the black one that was on the Fuchs. I had that car when it was red and black, and brake line popped, and I crunched a fender on it, and then Haggerty was super legit to work with, but the tough part was I took it to a VW shop to have them fix it, because I didn't want to take it to like Joe Schmo's Collision, because they don't know the cars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty important. But a lot of restoration shops don't work with collision. They don't work with insurance companies, stuff like that. So it's always been interesting to try to figure out how to get your car fixed and feel good that the guy fixing your car knows what VWs and how they're supposed to be done. So
absolutely. And then and that's part of the thing too, because I've hired American car builder guys to do body work and try to help me get stuff done, and because they were in a hard spot and they needed some help with it. But American car builders are not the same as VW car builders. You can't take a flat Impala and throw a guy to start shaping VW fenders and stuff. But Haggerty, great company to deal with. One of our local VW enthusiasts. I'm building her a squareback, actually. She's our Haggerty rep. Takes care of a majority of the VW scene in our area, and she's super easy to deal with. I make a phone call. A lot of times there's an app too that helps the body shops kind of get everything to the adjusters with whatever they need, especially with the COVID craziness. Right. Nobody wanted to come out, so they designed apps where you just get the car in this this frame and take a picture, and you send it to them, and they just tell you different angles. They tell you if the shot's good enough, and it's pretty easy process. But like you're saying, the point is getting it to somebody that's going to do it right, where they're going to take the time, and you can communicate with the adjusters and build those relationships. For it's like, I'm not going to just pile filler on top of filler if the thing's just a huge Bondo.
And the funny part is most of those collision shops will look at it like they're like, it's all 65 bug. I got I picked up a fender from the auto parts place, and that's close enough. They don't know the minute differences of all the different years and the different curvatures of the fenders and all that. So I think it's important, and it's good to know that your shop does stuff like that, because there's probably people out there that had a car that was that they want covered by a reputable shop that does specific VW work.
And a lot of these aftermarket fenders, people don't realize they want to just get a fender. Well, you go to bolt the thing on, it's crinkling, it's buckling because the thing's not shrunk right along the flanges. The apron points don't land right. The freaking points where the aprons join the freaking inner fender, nothing's even close. You have to cut that stuff apart and make it right. And if that's the kind of detail you want to do, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. So how big is your workload right now, and how long is it? What's it take typically to turn around a car for paint and body?
Generally, I'm usually 4 to 6 months. But with these splits and stuff that I'm doing, I don't really give a time frame, because the detail and the perfection that I want in those cars, it's pretty much it's not going to take 5 years, so we don't put it in paint jail like a lot of people refer to it as. But I take my time on those kind of projects. But generally, a project takes 4 to 6 months. Depends on how involved they want it.
Right.
And I mean, I've literally taken cars in and had them out within 4 to 6 months complete. They came to me in a trailer, blasted in an epoxy primer, and it's been painted, done, and shipped.
Nice.
So I kind of get on them, and I have a super strict work ethic. I have an unbelievable energy level, and I just freaking I get into things. I don't hammer it to finish it. It's just the way that I do it, and it's just kind of I don't mess around.
This is how you work.
Yeah, and it's efficiency, and that comes from my career where I was a flat rate tech. So I could get a job. It could be a 10-hour job. If I finish that job in 4 hours, I still get paid the 10 hours. So I'm banking 6 extra hours on that job. I roll into the next job, and I'm having 20 to 25-hour days because my efficiency is at that rate. Well, that's the same mindset I have. That's my mindset for life, because I did that for 26 years.
Right. You're just get it done.
It's ingrained in me, man. That's what I think now. Just get it done, get in, get it done. But I don't ever test the product. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a chemist. I do exactly what the products say to do, and make sure that you let stuff cure properly too as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People don't understand that.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of these things, and it's often something that I wondered about, because a lot of these fillers and stuff are catalyst activated, right? And so depending on the amount of catalyst you add, could also change the cure rates on them. But I think there's a fixed cure rate for fully cured, but there's also adding the right amount of catalyst hardener to something, and how that reacts could also have something to do with a little bit of shrink back too. I mean, I'm no chemist, but I know a little bit about everything. Also,
application process, because you can put stuff on too heavy, and it can cause a bunch of problems down the road. You can get cracking in primers. I mean, it depends on how you're doing it and what you're doing in the process. And so, I mean, just knowing the product, I mean, they give you mill thicknesses, what pressure you should spray at, and how much you should apply, and drying windows in between coat process. You have to read the spec sheets before you apply stuff. Yeah, and make sure. Yeah, which is hard for a lot of us. Like directions. Yeah, it's not going to happen. But for this, I'm very analytical about that, because I want to make sure that things are done right, because I don't want to deal with it down the road. And it's chemical. You still have issues. Just like I said, it's not that it's going to happen. It's how you deal with it that makes a difference. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, what's next for you guys? Like, what's on the horizon, and what do you have coming up out of the pipeline people should be looking for?
Well, I mean, the funnest thing right now is that, man, we're here.
Yeah,
we're all talking. You can see people's faces and mouths, and you can see teeth, and this is a huge thing for me. I mean, I'm just walking around just with a smile on all weekend. We were at Buggerama weekend. We camped out for the first time. I've been coming here since I was probably 9 years old. Camped out for the first time, and just having a good old time. But just seeing everybody. For me, I mean, our biggest thing's going to be, we've got that 47 split that's coming out. It's a very unique piece. I feel very blessed and honored to be able to do that. And I like to just roll. Who knows what's coming down the pike? I never want to ever say what I have got, coming in, because you never know. So whatever opportunity knocks, man, I try to take full advantage of it.
Now, do you have a tentative deadline for the split?
We're definitely on the downhill slope of getting this thing done. So we'll obviously bring it out at a show, something that's going to be
like a vintage show where it'll be.
I don't know if we'll do a vintage show. We'll do some different. I don't know exactly what we're going to do. We haven't really discussed exactly what the deadline is on that car, but I know it will be this year. It'll be done. So whether we start out next year with it, we haven't really decided. A lot of it comes down to availability. I mean, we've been waiting for over a year to have the engine, built. And it's it's a 25 horse. A lot of the materials and carpets and different things and parts need to be sourced out of Europe. And sometimes it takes some time. We're on their deadline sometimes.
Right. So building a project like that is always like, okay, what's going to be the next delay? Because there's always a delay. Whether it's research, you're waiting. We can't button that up because we don't know how this gets finished, and we want it done right. So we're waiting for Klaus to get back with us from Germany, and all this kind of stuff. So
and I mean, we're to the point now where I think we're missing one of the rear lever shocks, which is a single piston, which is extremely rare. So I think we're still trying to source that one part. The glass is another thing, just trying to get the right logos on the glass, because there's our logos out there, but they're not correct for 47. And then, Jason's phenomenal at that research and getting that stuff figured out as far as logos. Because, I mean, some of the early splits didn't have logos on the back windows, but some did. And it was kind of all those different dynamics and just the detail stuff. And that's what we're down to. We're down to the details, and we're really down to trying to figure out the right color of green that we think would represent what that color would be in, that era and what they would have done in the factory back in, especially being that it's a U.S. Army Exchange, split.
So when you say U.S. Army Exchange, what does that mean? Like, does that mean it was shipped here to the U.S. or?
No, it was. So what they did in Germany back in the 40s and the early 50s, the back during war times, is they painted the cars different colors based on what country was using the vehicle.
Okay.
So it was kept in Germany and it was used there, but they painted each different country's car a different color.
So if it was an American's car, or a British car, or whatever.
And that's what it come down to. And so to find that exact specific color, that was an industrial era. They didn't care about sheen. They didn't care if it was shiny. They didn't care they just wanted paint on the sucker. And it just kind of comes down to, we're trying to just find our best interpretation of that. And a lot of times it comes down to it's Army green, and we're trying to find the right Army green, because if we try to find something that we like, then it's probably not the right color, because it needs to kind of be an ugly green. So
No, that's rad, man. Well, anything else you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
No, man, it's great to meet you out here and have you bring out the timepiece, the rag chop car.